Excuse me.
First order.
Okay, we're live now, so we're good.
Okay, are we streaming? Yeah, there we go.
Okay.
All right, we're going to move on to item number 2, which is the committee presentation. I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Hall. Charles is still there, right?
Yep. Good morning.
I'm going to mute myself from background radiation.
Okay, I have a very succinct presentation about something that we're already doing. I was trying to bolster it to make it a little better. Hopefully I can share my screen. All right, what I'm looking at doing is putting together a more comprehensive program. We do have a policy in place that addresses CAT's drug and alcohol program, but there seems to be some slight disconnect between the practice and the procedures and how we administer the program. And currently we do have that program. It's, again, a little disjointed, and it's facilitated across several enterprises. An organized and comprehensive program under one umbrella would create greater service efficiencies and operational cohesion. The reorganization would also create greater integrity of the program, enhanced confidentiality, stronger continuity of processes, a better organizational cohesion, more efficient record keeping and management, and more importantly, a stronger chain of custody. From what I'm understanding, the process itself touches 4 or 5 different people before we get the results back from the provider. So I'm trying to shore that up by taking some of the processes out, and that'll probably create more of a burden on the Department of Safety and Security, but we're okay with that because we understand that's our responsibility. And if we could actually get this done, I think there would be a very marginal cost associated with getting this where we need to have it to ensure that we're compliant with all of the regulatory agencies in the event we're audited. Not saying that we're having any problems now, but I just want to make sure that the process is a little more streamlined and we can actually articulate what we're doing and have it done with a lot more consistency. I did do a little research and I spoke to several people in the transit industry about how the program should be administered. Through that research, I've learned that there is a free virtual conference in May. It's a 4-day conference. It was actually filled, but I have spoken with some of the organizers and they're going to try to give me 2 slots for that virtual free conference. Also, I spoke with another administrator, and she is supposed to be providing me with information on a drug and alcohol program manager training. That's going to be within the next 3 or 4 months. And once I get that information, I'll be sure to share that. And that's what typically I'm trying to achieve by revamping the program. Are there any questions? All right.
Hey, Charles, I had one quick question. How is the union involved with testing on the drivers?
Currently, they're aware of the processes. They usually don't get involved unless there's some problems. The actual testing out guidelines are a part of their MOA, so they're aware of how it is supposed to be administered. Again, I just want to make sure that the processes that we do institute are a little more seamless. And of course, we will share those with the union as we develop those new processes.
Okay. Yeah, I wasn't sure how that was worked into their contract. I wasn't really involved with any of that when it took place like a year and a half ago.
Yeah, it's stipulated and they fully understand how it should be administered.
And I assume we'll incorporate all of that into the next contract?
Yes.
Okay. All right, Charles, thank you for that. I guess we're going to go to Valerie with the agenda items. At least yes, I think it's Valerie. I'm never sure anymore.
Yes, sir. The first agenda item, I know it lists Gloria Royal as a presenter, but if she would allow me to make this presentation to the board. Okay. This This is the hazard pay that the board approved in January of 2021. If you recall that the board did make the approve the $600 payment for those workers that were actively engaged in working during those specific months during the pandemic, the crux of the pandemic. What we did not clarify at that time was that what the board did say at that time was that the payment would be made when the CRISA funds were received. We are proposing, and I think it has been proposed in the past, but the board didn't approve, that we'll go ahead and make these funds payable now through our operating funds since there's money available, and then we'll be reimbursed once we've received those funds. So we're just asking the board to just modify what they've already approved rather than wait for the funds to be received, that we'll go ahead and make the payments to the operators, and then we'll be reimbursed to our operating fund once the funds have been received.
Ellen, I see you unmuted. Go ahead.
Yes, is that, I'm just a little concerned that that might put our budget in jeopardy. I mean, I just hate to give out money before we've received the money. I'm just, not that I don't want to, it's just I want to keep the organization safe, financially safe.
Yes, ma'am.
When do we expect to start receiving any of those funds? Is there any submission date or timeline?
Gloria, can you address that?
We will allow Bryn to address that since she has been working with the application process, if she's on.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. We actually are going to discuss a little bit later in the agenda that there are a few options on how that timeline will work. So I can touch on it now, but basically as is now, we wouldn't be able to draw down until after June, but I'm proposing some amendments to allow us to draw down sooner.
Okay, why don't we cover it when we get to that section E?
Right. I would like to wait and get all the information, especially if there's any concern about the county renewing the line of credit. I want to make sure that we're okay.
Okay. Well, with that being said, we can move forward to the next action item, which is the extension of the COVID-19 emergency measures for Mr. Cooksey.
Yes, good morning, everyone. This is our standing order or measure that I'm asking to that we continue to be approved. I did look back. This initially came on board or was presented back in, believe it or not, it's been almost a year, 3/24/2020. At that time, there were two measures. There was a COVID-19 emergency measures that was basically around fair service. And then there was the COVID emergency measures CEO authority. Both came at the same time. So this is the latter, the first, rather, which is our emergency measures fair service without the fair service because we've already reinstated the fair. But I wanted to share with you some of the great things that have happened under this particular measure. So we're currently in a modified service level, which needed to happen. Reduced bus capacity to 50% to deal with our social distancing. We suspended fare from April through December. We also updated our transit fueling and hostler procedure. In addition to that, our bus cleaning, we created the bus cleaning sanitizing checklist. We introduced vital oxide, which is a cleaner that technically wipes everything out. It does a pretty good job. We've actually changed our head signs to read mask required as part of that. We now have mask dispensers on board of our buses. They look great. We clean deeply every day, but now quarterly, we also have a third-party company come in and do an overhaul. That's something that has been added. So these are all the operational things that have happened under this measure. So again, I'm just asking that we continue to extend this while we're dealing with COVID, And hopefully eventually, well, all of our prayers are answered, we'll be able to dismiss this at some time this year, but I would like to continue.
Yeah, I think that's really isn't an option. It's passenger and driver safety, and
Yeah.
that has to be number one. So I think that should be approved, and I think we won't have a problem passing that with the board. All right, disposal of vehicle assets. I know we got quite a few out there ready to go.
We do actually. There are currently a total of 15 vehicles, 2 revenue, paratransit, 8 non-revenue. We have 5 support vehicles that are that reached their useful life or years in service. So we are requesting to be able to move on from those assets. Here's some rules around the asset disposal. So FTA rules, once the asset is out of life, we may dispose of it how we see fit. So for nonprofits, because that is an option, we may offer the units to nonprofits, but they have to be licensed. Auction rules are state licensed auctions only, and then we can scrap it if we deem that it's more for just scrap metal, as opposed to we wouldn't be able to bring, wouldn't offer it to a nonprofit, or wouldn't be able to auction it off. And there are some of these vehicles that we've just been borrowing parts from to fix other vehicles. So we're at that point now. We'd like to be able to dispose of those vehicles and make room for the new vehicles coming in. So I'm requesting that your permission to be able to move forward with that.
And I'm assuming the non-revenues are the part monsters that are sitting around in the shop.
Well, those, as well as we've got, you may recall the MV1 vehicles. Several of those are on this list as well. Some support vehicles. So we have a variety of vehicles that we're turning over. They're just we're beyond the useful life of those vehicles. So you are correct.
Yeah, the paratransits have a pretty short life at 4 years, which
Yes.
is why the replacement is. But of course, they're a tenth of the cost of a full-size bus. So I guess that's the trade-off we have to live with. Once everything is disposed of and the new vehicles are in, how many vehicles are we going to have for the lot?
We should be
the new electrics.
Yeah, when everything is flipped over, we're projecting around 123 vehicles, and that's bus and para. And of course, if we can include the support vehicles, that's another 18 on top of the 123. So we won't be maxed, but we'll be up there pretty close.
And we're also going to be hiring drivers, and
yes, sir.
I have a big concern about that parking problem.
Yes, sir. At some point, we will have to do that. I know, they're doing some striping now, to the parking lot. We just have to, there are procedures in place on how to handle that as far as backing up and getting spotters to help with different situations on the yard. I mean, those things are in place, and we'll just have to continue to practice those safe measures. But, I'm sure we're not the only ones with tight lots right now, but we do have policies in place to avoid any accidents and things of that nature on the lot.
And how many of the full-size buses are out on our next round of replacement?
Well, we have
like 6 every year.
Yeah, we have 6
like
battery powered. Then we have 3 additional diesel buses that will be coming in. I don't have the dates of those. I can get a future kind of projection on year after year after that, but we do know there will be 9 buses coming in the next 18 months.
I do remember we did have was it the TAM plan that has the
yes.
management, and I know it listed at some point. Can we include that in the board package for this time around, so the board's aware of what kind of vehicles we're going to have and what's coming?
Doctor, are you asking for the replacement schedule?
I think that's part of the TAM plan, isn't it?
Plan, right. Okay.
There's so many letters. If I get them wrong, you'll have to excuse me.
You're good.
I knew we drew it up and it was in a board report about a year or so ago when we were going through it. It'd be good to remind us of where we're going to be and what expenses we're going to have.
Sure. I'll make sure we get that information over to the board.
Did you want
Thanks,
that
Lenny.
included as part of the board packet?
Yeah, I would put it in the board package so all the board members get to see it.
Sure.
The more we're aware of, the better we're able to handle the financial, because I know after being at the budget meeting, it's going to be tight. So
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
where we know things are going to change and what's going to happen and where the money's going to be going, the easier it'll be for us to start making decisions, but because we'll know about the future before it gets here, and
Yes,
we'll,
sir.
make our decisions better for the present.
Yes. Yes, sir.
All right, is that your last part, Lenny? Is someone else doing the half fare program?
I believe someone else is doing that, sir.
Yes, that's
All right,
Brand.
thanks, Lenny.
You're welcome. Thank you so much.
Okay, I think I'm up. Good morning.
Morning.
The Veterans Half Fare Program, as you know, the board approved this program. It started on November 11th of 2019, and then COVID hit. So we were able to get 4 months of solid data before we went into the pandemic. After the pandemic started and our fares were suspended, we obviously were not able to analyze the program anymore. So we had talked in months prior about picking this back up once we reinstated fares. When we reinstated fares in December, we've been able to get another 2.5 months of solid data for the who's using the Veterans Half Fare program. So now we do have that full 6 months of data. And at this point, we are required by FTA to do our Title VI analysis. So we're finishing that Title VI analysis up now. There are a couple options for the board at this point. I am recommending the board look at the Title VI analysis, which we anticipate will say no adverse impact on low income or minority populations, and then approve the program to be a permanent element in our half fare program. The other option, of course, is to, Dr. O'Halloran, I think you mentioned we could give it more time to look at it after we've reinstated fares. We can always do that, finish our Title VI analysis, and then give it a couple more months before the board wants to make that decision. That's fine too. But at this point, unless y'all change my mind, I would like to recommend that we move forward and make it a permanent category in our half fare program.
Yeah, I don't think that'll be a problem. I think that passed unanimously the last time it came up. Helen, I see you have your.
Well, I'm just, yes, I think it's a wonderful program. Do we have any way of tracking how many veterans are using it? I mean, I think it would be good to know.
We do. That's what we've been looking at now. And that's why we suspended the analysis, because we couldn't tell when we didn't have fares for anyone. We couldn't tell at that point. But just looking quickly at our numbers from November to February of last year, well, to March of last year when we suspended fares, we had about 755 veteran discounts. That accounted for $566 of discounted price. So even if we assume, excuse me, even if we assume the highest month is going to be our standard month, that would be about a $2,000 discount annually.
Yeah, I
Well,
don't
I
see
think
us
it would be
not
good.
approving it. But
Right, but I think it'd be great for us to publicize that. I mean, that we do recognize and appreciate our veterans, and this is what we're doing.
Absolutely.
I really do. I think
I will
it's
get with marketing
great,
as well.
and I think we should continue it, but I don't think we're not tooting our own horn here.
yeah, and with our bus actually passing right in front of that Veterans Health Clinic down off Abercorn behind the mall, pretty much puts them right on our routes. So, yeah, I don't think we're gonna have a problem passing that unanimously, and I can't see where anybody would say no.
Great.
And I assume you have this next part too, Brent?
Yes, sir.
All
The
right.
next one is in the grant administration category. So I just wanted to talk to you about let's see if I can remember this acronym, Coronavirus Relief and Response Supplemental Appropriations Act. There we go. It's CRISA is what we're calling it.
Chris is much easier.
Yeah, let's always call it CRISA because I will never remember all of those letters. So as you know, we got $5.8 million apportioned to us in this round, and it's basically the second round of CARES Act. What that means is that we have to, FTA has recommended, highly recommended, that we use the expenses for operating expenses first. So because we already have our FY20, our federal fiscal year 20, 5307 application completed through June of 2021, we could start the CRISA funds in July, and they're going to run about 15 months of full operating costs. However, that would mean we wouldn't be able to draw down actually until August, our first payment. So we were looking at what that option, what else we could do. And we came up with, if we amend our current 5307 application to stop its period of performance for operating expenses in February, so last month, we would still be able to draw down February's 50% match, and then we could start the CRISA application to start in March. That allows us to get ahead, get a little bit extra earlier funding, but also gives us about 770,000. I'm pulling up my total amount. Excuse me, let me find it. $773,600 that will free up in our 5307 application that is currently in our system. And we currently have, if you remember, we were looking for emergency expenses a few months ago that that we've already spent that we'd like to get reimbursed for. And we thought we were around 500,000. We've actually got a number closer to 717,000 in, again, expenses that we have already paid that are directly related to the COVID pandemic. We can amend our 5307 application to include emergency relief funding, which would give us that 717,000 immediately, as soon as we finish the application, available for drawdown, which would be awesome. It would allow us to get money in our bank account, quite frankly, earlier, and would leave about $55,000 in 5307 funding that we can add to our pot for facilities modifications, since we already have multiple projects going on there that we don't quite have enough money for. That would require a 20% match of about $14,000. So in my quick calculation, that means that rather than spending a local match through FY21 of about 967,000, that would be a local match of about 207,000. That's a big savings for us because we get to draw down that extra emergency relief funding earlier. So I brought this proposal to Ms. Ragland. I brought this proposal to the finance department, and they all concur with my recommendation to amend our current application, start our CRISA funds starting for operating in the month of March. And then again, that'll give us about 15 months of full 100% operating expenses, which will also accomplish the task of freeing up our 5307 funds for next year to work on capital projects that we know we have. Lots of good things in this application.
Yeah, and I like the idea of us starting to use the matching funds that basically don't cost us anything, but we've been losing on all that 5307 money for the last 5 years. We started in 2015, I believe, with the first application for the 5307. So we've been spending 3 million a year. That's 15 million. That means we lost 3 million in matching funds over that time from the SPLOST. And that's a way to cut spending. I like the idea of doing it for March. I kind of agree. I don't know if Helen or Tabitha have any thoughts, but I know we need to do the parking lot over there at Cat Central. It's a disaster area, and that's going to be in probably $250,000 paving project. But at least we can start looking into it and started getting bids. I got Helen first and you, Tab. I see you're driving.
I'm good with that.
Okay, Tab. You're not unmuted there, girl.
Okay, so
There you
I'm
go.
riding, not driving. But
Oh,
I
good.
think that something that we should discuss, because like it was mentioned about the credit line, is that I think there's a misperception that we are completely flush and that, you know, we just have all this money that we're going to be able to do all this stuff with without actually planning. So I think what you're saying is a really great idea, and that, you know, we should explain in more detail at some point where we actually are financially in the event that we don't get the credit line.
Yeah, right now, that graph that we all remember from the report shows that we have about $6 million, but that $6 million dwindles down to 2 million rather quickly, because those 3 months we really have literally no revenues coming in. I don't know if there's a better way to graph that so that some of our less financial savvy folks, including myself, I mean, I look at it and say, oh, wow, we're doing really well. We got 6 million. And we know it's not true, but that line of credit is filled in that gap. Fortunately, at the end of June, we still have money in the bank, which hasn't happened all that often without borrowing from the LOC.
Right, but we also have a minimum amount that we're supposed to maintain in the account that we don't touch, which is subtracted from that 6 million.
Yeah,
Right.
I figure that's got to be what, at least a one month of expenses, something like that. What is that number? I haven't heard
I thought
it
it was
before.
3 million.
It actually fluctuates based on what the balance is. At one point, 1 month it might be 3 million, might be 4 million the next month. But Miss Odell is right. Director Odell is right when the cash flow balance doesn't reflect that.
Maybe if we add that to that graph, it would give us, we could see how far we are above or below the minimum required maintenance money. Or even, what's the other graph? Bar graph. I tend to like bar graphs better, but that's just me. But I think the understanding on the finances is something we've always kind of steered away from, where no one wants to be, we don't all want to be CPAs. So it can be very confusing to understand some of it, but
so
I agree. We
can ask finance to include, they can give us the what that compensation balance is, that requirement is from month to month. We can ask them to include that.
Yeah, if that were a graph line just below the cash balances, then everybody could see that instead of having 6 million, we have 2.
I think it's important. I think it's important that we be mindful of that, and that it's not just, there to grab from.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's how you plan. And when a vote comes before the board, if we see 6 million, oh yeah, we'll vote for that.
Right.
Right.
So sometimes we voted for stuff in the past and it's like, well, we have no money. How are you going to, what are you going to pay for that with?
Right.
And we've
Right.
all been guilty of that. So
Yes.
Yes.
I'm not
Yes.
saying anybody in particular. We've all missed that little detail in the past.
Yes.
But to that point, Dr. O, I'd like to address what Director Stone mentioned earlier about the hazard pay. That I have spoken with the financial team, and this paying the hazard pay at this time versus waiting on the receipt of the PRISA funds would not create a financial hardship.
Well, wouldn't that accelerate if we go with the plan to start the CRISA in March? Wouldn't we have money available quicker so that we would be able to do it? I mean, we're talking about
earlier.
116,000, I think was the figure I heard at the budget meeting.
I think it's right at 114,000.
Yeah, it was 109 and 194 employees.
Mm-hmm.
So it's under 120,000. Is there any plans for part of that CRISA money to go into the Georgia Fund? Don't everybody answer at once. I see a lot of smiles and stares like, what's he talking about?
Yes, Dr. O, we would definitely look into at least moving, if not a full month's operating expense over to the Georgia Fund, at least 1 million of it over
Okay.
there. So
As long as we're thinking about that and going into the future, I know the FTA wants 3 months, which is about 6.6.
Mm-hmm.
But if we can get it to 5 or 5.5, I would be pretty happy with that because we seem to have funding coming in every 6 months. So we're never more than 6 months away from some kind of revenue generation.
Yes, sir.
So that's a good, try to do it. We'll try to do as much as we can. I think with the money coming in sooner, it's going to give us a chance to do it before the end of this fiscal year because we all kind of know there's going to be a budget crunch come July. It's not finished yet, but the numbers are going to be tough. And everybody's working hard on that, and I appreciate the work. Now, Bryn, you'd also mentioned the bringing in a fund administration group to work on these. Do you have anybody in mind? Does that have to be bid out, or can that just be done?
It does not have to be bid out. It would be a small expense, less than $5,000. And there are a few grants that are high priority that we've discussed, pulling someone in to assist with those. We did have RS&H, a contract with them up through June of last year, and that contract expired, but they are pulling some figures for us, a task order to give us an estimate as to how much that might cost, so that we can review that, and they're willing to stick with the same hourly rate that they
And I've asked Brent to also look at any additional assistance in addition to RS&H, another firm that might be able to assist, so we could at least have 2 quotes for this service.
Yeah, I think it makes sense now with the budget being this tight that we bring in people we need when we need them. I mean, it's not preferred. We'd love to have our own grants administrator, but it can be done down the road once we get this the money straightened out. If we start pulling those CRISA funds, how long would it be before we could contemplate paving that parking lot?
I think that this is the perfect time to have those conversations because it's budget time and because we've already got that kind of in our capital project pocket. So we can figure that out in the budget process and prioritize our capital funds as the board decides.
We're into March and we could probably at least get some figures on that and try to get that process going because that's a safety hazard. And again, that's got to be a top priority. Where are we on the remodeling of Cat Central? I know that was in one of the super grant package. Have we started any remodeling?
Uh,
I see Tab's hand up. Yes, Tab.
Well, I do have a question about that because where Beverly sits is like a floating wall, and she's in a space that's smaller than a closet. And why can't that floating wall just be moved out? Like, what's going on with that? I think we asked about that like 3 years ago.
Yeah, I've been trying to push that wall out for 3 years.
Yeah, it's a floating wall. It's not a weight sustaining wall. It's literally a floating wall.
Yeah, it's a temporary wall. It was never
Why?
meant to be permanent.
Right. Why can't that wall be moved out and give her room at least to turn around?
Yeah,
Like,
and
you
it
gotta walk
actually,
in and back out.
it actually is a storage closet because part of it is storage for
I mean,
coffee
it's
makers
really,
and coffee cups.
I'm almost starting to believe that's abusive, really.
well, we have been discussing, as a matter of fact, Steve Boatwright and Vernon and I met yesterday about some ongoing plans or projects and that was on the top of the list. We also have been speaking about some things that we can collaborate on the MPO's list, projects that might be available for, if at any time possible, the T-Splosh. So we've been making a list of projects that we would like to have done in that parking lot. We know is in dire need of a total makeover. So that's on the top of the list. Mr. Boatwright has that on top of his list. And that grant that Dr. O was speaking of, that's what he was making reference to yesterday when we met. So
Yeah, because
hopefully we'll be able to move forward.
Yeah, because the space on the other side of where she sits is not even being used. It's like open, dead space. There's no one there. It could be smaller,
We could probably, do we use those 2 desks out there with the 4 stations?
Yes, sir. Initially, those workstations were put out there for people to complete online applications, employment applications, things like that, for employees to use if they needed to, for searching the web, things like that, work-related incidents. But it's not used all the time. I'll say that 20 to 30% of the time, maybe during the day, someone's at one of those desks or workstations, but it's not used in a permanent position. No, it's not.
So it could be so that section could be a little smaller to add some square footage to hers. So
that we could even maybe take one out of there.
Yeah, I mean.
And especially now with everybody having email.
Every time I go over there.
Well, there are plans for expansion of that space because she wants to be able to, if one of you board members come by and you need something from her, you need a place where you can meet comfortably. And sometimes there might be instances where she needs to provide information or even training or instruction to you. You need some place that you can comfortably sit in and confidentially have that done. So we are in those discussions. Yes, we are.
Yeah,
definitely.
There was originally a plan to put a little table in there with 2 chairs.
Yes.
Also in that little room. I forgot it was so people could sit and have coffee, or I don't even remember the purpose. Beverly told me that about 2 years ago. And I said, really, they're going to put a table in here? Meaning the door could never open or never close because it would have hit the table. But crazy things come. Yeah, I'd love to see that done as soon as possible because just storage of what she needs. I know she moved some of the stuff out into that cabinet in the main lobby.
In the lobby. Mm-hmm.
And I know we have people come in the lobby for filling out the ADA forms and things like that. I know I talked about this with some other people along the way about possibly finding a new location for the paratransit operation. I know we can barely get everything in there now with the extra drivers. That would be something to look into spending grant money on, whether it be a lease or purchase somewhere within Chatham County. I'm sure there's some municipal properties out there that we might be able to get at a reasonable price, but still do
Yes.
the maintenance in the building where it is. The vehicles could be driven over or towed over if they need to be. We're talking about expanding. We're trying to get to expansion, getting a T-Splosh to pay for transit monies. But all that's going to be adding service, and adding service means more buses, more drivers. And there's no place to park the drivers, no less the vehicles. And at some point,
Yes,
we're
sir.
going to get overwhelmed.
Yes,
And
sir.
real estate's pretty available out there now, and it's something we should be looking into. I mean, it doesn't have to be done tomorrow or within the next year or so. I don't see how we're going to maintain everything on that one site.
Dr. O, that was actually part of our conversation as well yesterday with Brandon, Steve, and I. We spoke about real estate acquisition and in particular for the paratransit enterprise.
Yeah, because it's perfect. They can pull out their paratransit vehicle and park in the same spot.
Yes,
So
sir.
it's not two parking spots. We can't do that at Cat Central.
Yes,
I
sir.
don't think. I see
Yes.
Tabitha waving. Tab, unmute.
Okay, sorry. All right.
Oh, you like the
Yes.
idea of another building?
I don't dislike it. I'd be concerned about where we wanted to put it. So
I think we're pretty open. Can pretty much put it anywhere in Chatham County because they go out on a route and they head to a location.
Yes.
Cat Central really isn't all that local, centrally located. I live down in Georgetown. You aren't anywhere near me. You're 13 miles away.
yeah,
So if I'm the first pickup, they got a ride.
But please do know that we are already having that discussion.
And I think if it came to the board, I think they'd be all for it because I see people parking on the streets and walking out there. And I was there when the gunshot incident occurred, when Curtis called me and he and Beverly were off to a meeting and I was walking to my car and they told me to get in my car and get out of there fast because someone was shooting like a block away. That was, I don't know, 2 years ago. I was in the building for whatever reason. And I said, that started me thinking about it, but I parked in that lot a couple of times and it needs work. Plus, I often couldn't even find a spot to park.
If I can add, Dr. O, but make sure, a part of that conversation with Para, I've run a couple of different paratransits that were separate from the main facility. So I think I'd be able to bring a lot to that conversation, really how that should be set up.
Yeah, I think, moving the whole call center, having their own little break room, things like that. I mean, we don't need a Cat Central sized building. We don't need the gym or boardrooms, or
we can be creative.
It can be done in probably 5,000 square feet, maybe 8,000. I'm not sure. I don't remember commercial that well, but the call center could be centralized. And I think that would take a lot of space that we need in Cat Central to expand.
and there's a lot of space south side. You could literally move it south side.
South side over off MLK. There's,
It's just space.
What's the county got available over there?
We got space.
I know we do.
An even better idea is keep the call center in the cloud where it's at now, which has been very effective so far. So that's something to consider moving forward.
Yeah.
Well, as long as we got our tab on that, and my other not pet peeve, but with the fact that we're moving towards some electric vehicles, the fact that we could solarize Cat Central to reduce our electric footprint.
That would be great. We got enough sun in Savannah to do that.
Yeah, we sure do.
Plus the fact that I think the panels could even be put on the buses, although I don't know if the weight would be worthwhile to do. It would probably cost more to move them than what we'd recoup in. Because I know when they looked at this a year and a half ago, And I know no one's going to be happy about the fact that the electric buses are a net loss for CAT. Between the cost, the lifespan, I think they're only 4 years on an electric bus. They're like $1.1 million a bus or $1.2 million. So I don't know if we're ever going to be to expanding the fleet. I think it would be more practical with the utility, the smaller vehicles. But this project started 4 years ago. Money was put in there for it. We've already done the structure into the building. I do like the fact that the generator is mobile. We can drive it away in a tornado or hurricane or any other problems. But we really have to seriously look at the long-term costs and savings for going electric.
Mhm.
Seems to be much more economical in a smaller vehicle.
Dr. Oath, I might go back to the grant
Guys.
funding.
Guys, I'm sorry. I need to break off. I'm gonna have to come back.
Okay,
All right, we're almost
All right.
done, Tab.
Okay.
okay. I just wanted to mention before you conclude that I spoke with Mr. Jack Kingston with Squire Patton and Boggs last week, and he is researching, if you will, just how much they can help us with the grants, writing the grants, not just researching them, but actually helping in the grant application and some consulting. So he's going to get back to me on that. We had a really good discussion about the contributions that Squire Patton Boggs that they're making within our contract and how they might be able to expand on that. And there might be some things within the contract that we haven't asked them to do before that they may be able to do. So I'm waiting to hear back from him, and I'll let you know.
Yeah, because I know we have that bill that's going to be coming up to refund transit. So we're hoping they at least keep it at the same level, maybe up it somewhat.
Mhm. Yes. But I think he's going to be able to help us in helping Bran with the grant writing and some consulting with her.
Yeah,
So, but we'll see.
and they have quite a bit of power up in DC.
Yes, sir.
Anything else anybody else has they want to bring up while we're still here? I've covered everything I had. I know Lenny sent us some stuff to look at, and we'll get a look at that in a few minutes. We're not going to do it today, but it's for the committee to look at and come up with some ideas. Any new business? I guess that was new business or old business. And our next meeting's next Tuesday, the 16th, is governance at 11 o'clock, and the 23rd is the regular board meeting at 10. If nobody has anything else, I'm going to adjourn the meeting.
Well, I have one quick comment.
Go ahead, Ellen. I'm sorry.
That's all right. I just, I still want to follow up on this first mile, last mile, collecting some data on that. I mean, especially when you were talking about the electric buses and not being a particular savings. It just, if we can focus on transit on the popular routes and get people to those routes more effectively, I think it would just be wonderful for CAT.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
I want to see what information we can start gathering to look at this. I mean, if other communities are doing it, I think we need to get on the bandwagon here and at least explore what it would mean.
Mm-hmm. Ms. Stone, we discussed
still have some of that. Oh, good. We still have some of that from the Let Go when we did that a while back. So I think we need to delve back into that whole project.
I do too, because when I mentioned that when we were in Atlanta, and our state legislators really were very on board with that concept.
Helping get GDOT to pay for it.
Well, you
never know.
If we come up with a very good proposal,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to say that I think that they thought that was CAT thinking out of the box and something that would help get people that are in the more remote areas closer to the main line and therefore not sending buses, to places like Tybee, but still providing access.
All right.
Mhm.
If I can chime in real quick on that, Brent and I were having a great discussion about a week or so ago, Director Stone, in reference to that very thing, and looking at, we had some ideas that we want to sketch out before we kind of bring them forward. So
Good.
we're definitely in the same vein or the same area direction as your thought and the whole board, because it'll benefit the community. So we have some ideas. Give us a minute to kind of sketch them out, but we have had at least our first round of talks on what that might look like. And
Yes.
also on the electric buses, it's 12 to 15 years useful life. So you do have a little bit
Oh, it
more
is that
time.
long.
Yeah, so we got some time on that. Just wanted to clear that up, but we're working on it. So we're looking at it.
Thank you.
For some reason, I was told it was 4 or 5 on the electrics. Okay,
Yeah.
if it's 12 to 15, then
Yes,
it's
sir.
a whole different evaluation process because it's only 7 on the others.
Mhm.
But yeah, knowing that would help going forward.
Got you. No problem.
Anything else? Gloria, how are we doing with the budgeting? Is there a meeting today?
We have a meeting tomorrow. We have a
Tomorrow.
meeting scheduled tomorrow. Yes, sir. It's going very well. Consultant DeRay Williams, she's working with the chiefs
she's
and
on.
with the finance department. Yes, and she's doing a wonderful job.
She
We appreciate
is.
all the work that she's doing. So it's
Yeah,
going
we're
really
glad
well.
she came back.
Yes.
What can you have, Jure? Can you invite me to that tomorrow? I see your J up there.
Yes, I'm sorry. Yes, I can invite you. That's the internal finance team meeting, but you're on the Thursday meeting with the entire team, including Val. So if you have a
Oh, then
preference, I can-
Thursday's fine. I don't need to be at all of them. You guys can.
Okay.
You
All
guys
right.
are better off working without me in the way.
Thank you.
I just like to get the updates so I know where we're going with strategic planning in the future.
Yeah, you'll have it on Thursday. You'll get the full update on Thursday.
All right. Thanks, Jure. Thanks for helping.
You're welcome.
Anything else? All right, then let's adjourn. Thank you, everybody.
Thank
Have a
you.
great
Thank
day.
you.
Thank you.
You as
Enjoy
well.
this
Thank you.
wonderful
you.
weather.
Yeah.
Yes.
Bye, y'all.